And welcome back to Saturday Report. I am Rita Cosby. President Biden under fire after a string of ad-lib comments that sent his White House staffers into major cleanup mode by walking back his words. It seemed like it happened over and over again in the last week or so. And we are joined now by former Trump Communications Director and also visiting fellow and contributor of the Daily Signal, Tim Murtaugh. Tim, what a wild week it was, and it was filled with gaffes by President Biden. And these gaffes were quite serious, especially when he discussed the idea of regime change, of pushing Putin out of power. It sent shockwaves. I want to play it and get your reaction, Tim.
We will have a different future, a brighter future, rooted in democracy and principle, hope and light, of decency and dignity, of freedom and possibilities. For God's sake, this man cannot remain in power.
Tim, what did you think when you heard that? Because then the White House walked it back and said, well, he was just speaking in his personal capacity. He's the president of the United States. He's doing a major address in Warsaw. They billed it as one of the biggest, basically, of his presidency. And yet now they're trying to claim it was just some citizen speaking there. I mean, give me a break.
Yeah, when you're president of the United States, you really don't get to have your personal opinion on things. When you're out there on the world stage, you are speaking as the leader of the free world, as the president of the United States. And the White House billed this as probably the most important speech of Biden's presidency to this point. And a lot of his supporters were out there and journalists saying that, oh, this, as it was going on, this is the speech that he'll be remembered for. And I think that has turned out to be true, but not for the reasons that they think. And you're right. This was a series of gaffes in the 48 hours that he was over there. First, he told American troops what to expect when they got to Ukraine, thereby clearly implying that they were going to be deployed to Ukraine. The White House had to walk that back. Then he said if Vladimir Putin used chemical weapons, that the United States would respond, quote, in kind, which means that the U.S. would also use chemical weapons. And the White House had to come along and say, well, actually, that's not what he meant. And then he very clearly talked about regime change, and the White House had to say, well, no, that's not U.S. policy. And then it got worse because Biden came back, and when he was talking to reporters back here at home, he said, yeah, that is what I meant. And then the White House had to say, well, that was in his personal opinion. And so they have a real problem with message discipline, and you get Biden out there on the world stage, and his natural inclination is to go into his tough guy act. You know, I think he feels like he's telling stories about fighting corn pop at the community pool back there in Delaware when he was a kid, and it really is damaging. It's damaging because you really don't know who's in charge. The president goes out and says something, and then the White House says that's not what he meant. Who's in charge?
Yeah, they're just all over the place. And then when he goes back out there, Tim, he has the card in front of him. He has that cue card, and it's labeled right. Tough talk on Putin, and basically saying express moral outrage. If you really were expressing just moral outrage, you shouldn't have to put it on a card, Tim Murtaugh. You know that better than anybody.
Sure. And look, the entire world practically has been expressing moral outrage about what Vladimir Putin has done by invading Ukraine. And it's strange that the president has to be prompted and reminded to do the same. But expressing moral outrage is not the same as calling for regime change, which is precisely what Joe Biden did. And when you're talking about removing the head of state from a nuclear power, that is a very significant thing that the president of the United States clearly did. But he goes into this tough guy mode, and he really can't help himself because this is how Joe Biden has always been. And these days, as his, I think as he is deteriorating, he has less self-control. And as I said, he remembers when he battled the mighty corn pop back in his youth. I mean, he stopped just this short of challenging Vladimir Putin to a push-up contest, for goodness sake. And I think the White House has to go out there and rein him in all the time and whisper in reporters' ears, that's not really what he meant. And that's just not a good look when you have to. The White House is there to reinforce, it should be anyway, reinforce what the president said. But the Biden White House staff seems to serve to go out and correct the president over and over and over. And that's not what you want in a world leader.
Yeah, and it's very dangerous, especially at a time with such sensitivities. And given the dynamics of what's happening right now at this moment, it's just an incredible thing to see. Tim Murtaugh, it's wonderful to have you here on the show. Thanks for joining us.
Good to see you again, Rita. Thank you.
Thank you. Always great to see you, Tim. Thanks so much.
Hey, I'm Rob Finnerty. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please join the conversation in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe, too. Hit the bell icon to be alerted to breaking news. And remember, there's a whole lot more on Newsmax TV, America's fastest growing cable news network. Newsmax TV, we're real news for real people.